Good, good Monday morning of the second week of the year, the ordinary time of the year now. All the text now very, very simple in comparison with the high points like in the Christmas cycle, Easter cycle, even Lent, etc. These are ordinary, the ordinariness of holiness itself. It really struck me as I was sitting there this morning. Actually, it's a Saturday morning, and you can see I'm wearing my habit. And the reason is I say Mass by myself. This is the only day of the week I don't say a public Mass. I say the Mass at my dinner table, surrounded by the pictures of the people of my life, really. My family, my friends, Junie, all the people that have made such a decisive narrative difference in me. Namely, without these people, you cannot tell my story. The ordinary and the extraordinary, mostly the ordinary. That's the truth. My friends, my family, most of all, my family, Junie, right there. And their pictures are right there on the table. I put the chalice, which my folks gave me when I was ordained. Right? My chalice sits there. And for a purificator, don't tell the canon lawyers, I use a napkin that was my father's. It's a true story. I don't know how I got it, where it came, but it's definitely not a purificator where it has the cross on it and all the rest. It's been blessed. It has been blessed by the life of my father and mother from my dinner table at home. See? I take life seriously. I think of the sacraments of life. Not just the seven sacraments, but because the seven sacraments embrace the broader sacraments of life. They institutionalize, as it were, the ordinariness of life itself. The Eucharist is the bread of life, the table of the Lord, the table where we eat together as a family. If you never ate together as a family, you don't get it. You don't understand the Eucharist. I don't know what you understand. You don't get it. It's the family that came together, that comes together. You see? When at the table with the father and the mother, and it's places of both honor and dignity, and grandparents, if you're fortunate enough, who tell the story. They tell the story. Where do you learn the story of your family? You learn it at the table, at the dinner table. Does that sound like the homilies? You see? What do we do as a preacher in the homily? We tell the story of the gospel. Who are we telling it to? To the people sitting in front of us, those who are at the table with us. You see? It's not ritualistic. It is the ritual of love at the table. If you want to understand the Eucharist, go sit at a dinner table with your family and start from there and you'll get it. If you think it's something extraordinary, you're killing it. You're taking the life out of it. You're depleting its story, the narrative of the gospel, the narrative of the sacrament. You see? Christianity is the religion of the extraordinariness of the ordinary. See? That is the truth. And you get that in the simplicity of Mark's gospel, not in what's in it, but what it isn't. It isn't overblown. It is simply a collection of narratives, a collection of stories, true stories, profoundly, radically, religiously true stories, preaching stories, put together by Mark. See? And so you're catching the life of Christ while sitting at the table as the church tells you her story, who she is with Christ on the journey, you see? My father talked about the old country, Italy. See? Not that he wanted to go back. It's interesting in St. Mark's Gospel today. He said, don't pour new wine into old wineskins. Don't try to go backwards. You can't, but you can remember and draw the wisdom of the past. When my father talked about the old country, he never talked about a yearning to return to it. There may have been a moment when he was tempted toward it. As he got old, he thought he could go home, go back to Italy with my mother and live in his old house. He owned it. Okay, he bought it many years before for his parents. Okay, many years before he was married. Okay, so 80 years ago, 90 years ago. Okay, and he wanted to go. He may have wanted till he went back, and he knew his life had taken him beyond that. When you think of the imagery, my father came here on a probably a tramp, some form of steamer. I don't know what kind of ship, but he was a poor kid. He was 18 years old, didn't speak the language. When he went back 15 years later with my mother in 1937. He came here in 22. And he went back in 1937 with my mother on the Normandy, the greatest luxury liner, arguably in history. See? Did he want to go back to being a peasant? No. Did he want us to be peasants, his sons? He wanted us to be educated men. I think one of the most painful moments in my father's life was when my brother quit college. And the hope that we had, and my mother and I had, and we all had, that in my father's old age, as he was essentially dying from dementia and Alzheimer's, whatever, that he realized Pete finished college. He finished and got his degree. I hope my father knew that he finished. It meant so much to my dad. He wanted his sons to be college men. You know, he understood education. But he wasn't educated, but he was brilliant. He understood, and he understood you can't go backwards. You must go forward. You have to grasp the opportunity and the mystery of life before you in the moment and in tomorrow, and enjoy it, as it were. One time he said to me, as he was very old, he said to me, "I've enjoyed my life." He said that at the dinner table. Me? Think of the Eucharist. I've enjoyed my life. What a great line. I've enjoyed my life. Not that I survived, nor do I have resentment. I've enjoyed my life. What a testimony to the authenticity of living. Genuine life. Isn't that something? Huh? I've enjoyed my life. And he died that way. But he didn't ask more of life than he could give, and that's the sacrament. That's Christ. He's a miracle worker, but look how he does it. In the quietness of the moment. He doesn't go around, "Hey guys, I'm in charge. I do miracles, by the way." He's not a kind of a Billy Graham. I'm not taking away from Billy Graham. Or these kind of evangelical preachers on television or revivalists. He wasn't. He was a quiet man who preached the gospel into the heart. He preached who he was to the people who saw the poor, the ordinary. I think Christ enjoyed his life. I think he enjoyed his life. You see? I think that's true. I think St. Peter did, because he stumbled around all over the place, but he was faithful. I think St. Peter enjoyed his life. And there's a great sacramentality to all of that. But you can't go backwards. That's the gospel today. You can't pour new wine into old wineskins. But by God, you can certainly taste new wine. And you could yearn for the refreshment of new wine. Right? Oh, look, you look back for the sake of wisdom. You cannot have tomorrow without yesterday. You can't have a wisdom that will guide you into tomorrow without the wisdom that is derived from yesterday. But you can't repeat yesterday. But the great temptation, any professional way of life, is to try to replicate the past. It's a temptation that is built to fail. I see it in academia. When I came here as a chair in '89, there was a temptation to restore what I knew 15 years earlier. I wasn't here very long. I really couldn't be done. It was over. And I had to look at the young in the department to see what the promise of tomorrow would be. The promise of tomorrow we had to risk. Not go back to the comfort of yesterday, but the adventure and mystery of tomorrow. Sitting together at the table, talking about tomorrow in the light of yesterday. We tell the story of yesterday in order to live vigorously tomorrow. And that was true of the department. And it's true of the church. If there's a temptation right now in the church among some of the young, they want to go back to the good old days. There was no such thing. There were those days, and there are our days now. You have to embrace the future. Learn from the past. Try not to fail the same. Try to learn from the past, not to make certain kinds of mistakes, but to live with adventure and trust in the spirit of life itself, the Holy Spirit, who calls us to tomorrow, not yesterday. But he teaches us from yesterday what is the adventure of tomorrow. That's the truth. These are ordinary days, the next readings, but the ordinariness of extraordinary grace, the promise of the gift of tomorrow, the Holy Spirit calling us to tomorrow.